Hi, it's Wednesday, and that means it's time for another video edition of Widower Wednesday. I'm Abel Keogh, and today in two parts, as the first of two parts, we'll be discussing the two biggest mistakes women make when dating a widower. I've been doing this relationship coaching with women dating widowers for about 15 years now, and these two issues that we're going to discuss today and in the video next week are by far the driver of most issues, of most of the problems that women encounter when dating a widower, 90% of them, in fact. So if you can overcome these two mistakes, if you're making them, then you have a good chance of knowing whether or not how serious the widower is about you, and also maybe getting getting a better bead on the relationship and deciding whether or not this is a relationship that's actually going somewhere. So today we're going to discuss one of the two issues, and that issue is boundaries. By far the biggest issue I see is that women don't set boundaries when dating a widower. So let me give you an example. So a woman's out dating a widower. He's a great guy. They have some chemistry. Things are going well. And every time the widower talks about his late wife, he refers to his late wife as his wife, right? He's saying, yeah, my wife and I did this, we did that. And, that kind of causes maybe some awkwardness, during the date. It can especially cause awkwardness if you're maybe, at a group setting and you're talking to a bunch of people and the widower is saying, well, my wife and I did that, and people are kind of looking over at you like, wait, if he and his wife did this, who are you? Trying to figure things out like that if they don't know his story. So women don't set boundaries, and I want to be completely fair here, that unless you've really thought a lot about dating a widower, you probably aren't sure how to react when these kind of things come up. Like, I don't know really of any woman under the age of 60 that when they've started dating again, whether they're single, divorced, or whatever, where, when they start dating thinking, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to date a widower. That doesn't happen a lot, and there's unique situations that you run into when dating a widower. And so, it can be kind of hard in a situation to know how to set boundaries or what boundaries to set. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about some of the mistakes that come with not setting boundaries and how you can set boundaries and do things like that. So let me give you an example. I think most of us have pretty good ideas of our standards and what we want from somebody that we're dating and maybe hope to marry, if marriage is the end goal here. I know when I was dating Marathon Girl, there were some specific things that I was looking for in a woman, that I wanted in order to make sure that I could be happy with her for the rest of my life. And Marathon Girl had some standards too. There were some things that she wanted in a guy she was dating, and the way she wanted to be treated, and how she expected him to behave. What are some things that she wanted? What did she expect me to do? Things like that. And I came in and threw a wrench in the whole works because I was a widower, and Marathon Girl at the time we were dating, she was 23, and let's be honest, she had never thought about dating a widower before. In fact, when she found out I was a widower, we almost didn't even have, the relationship almost stopped there because, she had never, the whole idea of dating a widower just kind of freaked her out. And so here she is, she comes in with these standards and behavior that she expects from somebody, and then she ends up dating a widower and throws a lot of that stuff out of the just kind of goes out. It's the baby out with the bathwater kind of thing. It's like, wait a minute, I haven't thought about this specific example before, and she kind of a lot of times didn't know how to react or how to, at first, what should I do here? So, going back to that example that I gave earlier about the widower calling his late wife is just saying, hey, my wife and I did this. That was me. So the first couple dates that we went out on, I was saying, if the topic came up, and it kind of came up because she's trying to figure out, well, is he really ready to move on? His wife just died 6 months ago, and I don't know if I even want to be here. So she's asking questions, about me and the relationship and stuff like that. And I'm always saying, well, my wife and I did this, my wife and I did that. Now think about how Marathon Girl feels. Is she's like, wait a minute, you're calling this dead woman your late wife, you're calling her my wife, and I'm here, and you kind of, and we're dating, and all this stuff's going on, and she kind of doesn't know what to do, right? And I think that's pretty, I don't think she'd ever thought about herself being in that kind of place before, and because of that, she wasn't quite sure how to react. But after a couple of dates, she had some time. She thought about it. She got her act together, and we were out. And I don't even know how it came up, but I said, "Yeah, me and my wife, blah 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 blah." And she's like, "Just so you know, it makes me really uncomfortable when you say my wife. I know you loved her. I know that that you have this great life together, but." It makes me feel like I'm dating a married man, essentially, is what she said. And so she goes, is there some other way that you can refer to her? And I kind of thought about that. And, I hadn't even thought about that before. I'd just been going on and dating, and no one had ever said that to me before. And so I had to kind of pause and think, like, well, how do I refer to her? She's bound to come up in conversation. And I guess maybe a little bit in my heart, I kind of felt like, well, she was my wife, and isn't she kind of my wife still? This is a whole new world for both Marathon Girl and I. And so, I finally, I kind of thought about it, and I didn't have an immediate response to her, but I think the next time I saw her, I said, hey, I've been thinking about what you said, and how about if I either refer to if I refer to my deceased wife as either my late wife, or if I refer to her by her first name. And Marathon Girl thought about it for a second. She goes, you know what, that's good, that's great. Let's try it out and see where it goes. And so we kind of, went from there. But if you look at that example, Marathon Girl found herself in a situation where she didn't know how to react, because she had never thought about dating a widower, had never, thought about, well, what are my standards and boundaries when a widower refers to his late wife as his wife. So she went home and thought about it a little bit, and she really didn't have an answer, but she at least brought it up as a concern, saying, look, you've got to come up with some other way to do this. And we kind of, and even though she didn't quite have exactly what that boundary was, she knew that me referring to my late wife as my wife was completely unacceptable. So we had to come up with something else. And so she went out and set some boundaries, and we kind of worked together on the boundaries a little bit, and we came up with an answer and a solution that has worked. It worked on that date, and it's served us well for the 15 years. Sorry, sweetie. Yes, 15 years. Is it 15? Anyway, a long time. In the 15 or 14, 15 years that we've been married, it served us well. Obviously, she doesn't come up with a conversation all the time anymore. But when I do refer to her, it's either I refer to her by her first name, or I refer to her as a late wife, and it's fine. So it's important. So I don't want you to feel bad if you found yourself in a situation that you've never thought of before, or have never been in before, and you don't know how to react. We're all going to find ourselves in those places, in those times where it's like, gosh, what do I do here? And that's okay. So if you've found yourself in a place that you don't know how to react or what to do, don't beat yourself up over it. Really, what it comes down to is you need to decide, with these unique situations that come with dating widowers, what is acceptable to you? What is the acceptable behavior? Is it okay if there are pictures on the wall? Is it okay if he refers to his late wife as his wife? Is it okay if he wears a wedding ring? Is it okay if he goes to the cemetery once a month or once a year or on special occasions? Is it okay if he commemorates his late wife's birthday, with a cake and the kids? I mean, I've heard all kinds of things. And if you don't know how to react at first, that's fine. I don't think anybody else would know how to react at first unless you've put some thought into it. So really what I'm trying to get you to do here is that if you find yourself in these situations and aren't sure what to do or what to say, I think on the first time that's okay. But what you need to do to really set boundaries is to really take some time and think it through. Think through how much this bothers you. How much is this something that if you were to go on and get married and live with each other for the rest of your lives, is this a behavior that you could tolerate? 10 years from now, 15 years from now, when you're both old and gray, is this a behavior that you can tolerate? And you've got to set these boundaries early, and you have to kind of draw a line in the sand, because if it bothers you even a little bit, and I don't want you to rationalize your feelings away. If it bothers you a little bit now, I promise you it's going to bother you a lot more 6 months from now, a year from now, 5 years from now. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. So you need to go home, evaluate the situation, just take some time and think about it, and think, what is acceptable to me? Because really a relationship is about finding somebody that's that respects your values and your needs, and not that you're giving up your values and needs because somebody finds themselves in a special in a place where they've lost their wife or something like that. And look, I'll be honest, losing your wife sucks. It's horrible, it's awful, but that's not an excuse for someone to treat you like crap or to not respect your boundaries just because that they've lost their wife. And we'll get into that a little bit more in the second video. But really, it's about you knowing what's important to you and setting those boundaries. So let me give you an example from my personal life. I don't drink alcohol. It's something I've decided for a long time that I'm just not going to do. And if people want to drink alcohol, it's fine. I don't care. But when I find myself in that situation in business settings, or if I'm at a party and somebody offers me a beer, I just say no and go on. And 99% of the time, it's not an issue. They respect those boundaries that I have, and we all have boundaries, right? We all have boundaries and things that we're going to tolerate. So what's important here is that you learn when dating a widower what those boundaries are. If you don't know what they are the very first time you date a widower, that's fine, but you have got to put some time into this. You got to put some time and reflection into what is important to you. How do you want to be treated? What is something that is acceptable and not acceptable in this relationship, and kind of draw that line in the sand. Now, here's the male psychology part. I've told you that these videos, I want you to kind of get inside the guy's head or the widower's head that you're dating, is that when you draw a boundary, it's going to force that widower to make a choice and make an evaluation. He's going to evaluate whether or not you're worth respecting that boundary or that line. A lot of times, men need to make that choice. Widowers need to make that choice, because if they like you and they think there's something really special there and they love you, they'll respect that boundary. There were several times through our relationship where Marathon Girl had to set boundaries. I had a ring around my neck that Marathon Girl didn't know about at first. But once she found out about it, again, it was drawing the line, drawing the boundary. If you want some more examples of this, you can read my book, Room for Two. There's lots of examples in there. That's a story of kind of how I met Marathon Girl and we went on and got serious. But there's example after example in there of Marathon Girl kind of being put in an awkward place and not knowing how to react, but coming back in a day or two or the next time we had a date and kind of setting a boundary and kind of making me make that choice. The choice was, okay, this is, if you want this relationship to continue, this is how I want to be treated. This is how Marathon Girl needs to have you treat me in order for this relationship to continue. And it forced me to make a choice. It was awesome. I had never had that before. I was kind of dating somebody before Marathon Girl, and she never set boundaries. I mean, I could act however I wanted, and she didn't care. And so as soon as I was forced to make that decision, and she drew that line in the sand, I was forced to decide what's more important. Is it this kind of behavior, or is it my relationship with Marathon Girl? And Marathon Girl won every time. Now, it's not to say it was always easy or a smooth transition process to me to kind of respect those boundaries. And to be honest, sometimes I kind of pushed the boundaries and tested them to see if she was serious. And yeah, she was serious, and kind of learned not to test those boundaries anymore because I wanted the relationship to work. But she drew that line in the sand, and she forced me to decide what was more important, my past or her. And I had to make that choice, and I have no regrets about the choice. But I don't think we would have got married, and our relationship would not be anywhere near it was today if she hadn't set those boundaries early. And if you haven't set boundaries early, if you've been allowing behavior for a while, you're going to have a heart-to-heart and say, look, I've been making a mistake. I've been permitting this behavior when it's been bugging me, and it's something I shouldn't have done. And that's okay. Be honest about it, and let's move forward and give him that choice. But a widower needs to have to make that choice. And if you indulge in behavior that you wouldn't tolerate otherwise, you're telling him it's fine. And it's not too late to kind of pull things back and draw those boundaries. But the sooner you can draw those boundaries, as soon as you can decide what is acceptable for you and what is not acceptable, the better and faster you can draw those boundaries and then stick to them, the better chance you have of either the relationship working out or the relationship ending. And no one wants a relationship to end, but if he's not going to respect your boundaries, there's a lot of other things he's not going to respect about you. So that's the first issue, is setting boundaries and setting firm boundaries and knowing what your standards are. So your assignment here is to, if you find yourself that you're dating a widower and there are things that you're uncomfortable about within the relationship, take some time for yourself. Take an hour or two, find some quiet time where you can be alone and decide what is acceptable, what is not, and we'll go from there. We'll do part 2 next week. Part 2 is going to be on the second mistake, which kind of dovetails into the first one here, but it's going to be about the second mistake that women make, and we'll talk about that next week. Anyway, Abel Keogh for Widower Wednesday. Thanks for your time.